Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of BIM Careers. Today, I'm with Anneka Chand.
Hello.
And we're going to discuss some very interesting topic, which is a comparison between BIM in the UK and in Canada. In this episode, we will discuss different topics. We'll compare basically how BIM is practiced in the UK versus in Canada, and what are some of the things that Canada can learn from the UK in BIM. So first of all, as you know, Anneka, I always ask the same question when I start my videos. Who are you and what do you do? And welcome to this episode.
Thanks, Tarek. Thanks for having me here and inviting me to BIM Careers. Who am I? I think everybody answers with, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm just going to basically start with, I'm from the UK, of course, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in Canada for 4 years, almost 4 years. My career really started as a child with Lego. That kind of drew me into some creativity and building things and technology. I then studied architectural technology back home in the UK, mm-hmm. in Sheffield. And then as I was studying, I became more interested in sustainability and energy. That's what I meant to say.
Energy, okay.
Yeah.
So, so you studied basically, you're an engineer or an architect by training, or both? I know Xenia was when you did...
Yeah, so I'm an architectural technologist,
mm-hmm.
And as I became more interested in sustainability and energy, I decided to also study nuclear reactor physics. But BIM was always an interest of mine, and I did work in engineering firms as well. So I was lucky enough to be exposed to multidisciplinary projects and different sectors as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice, that's great. So currently, can you talk a bit about what you currently do? Without mentioning names necessarily, but what is your typical day? What are your current responsibilities basically in BIM?
Yep, so right now I've moved from the design sector to the construction sector as I moved to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a VDC Manager, so virtual design construction, and I manage all things related to technology, processes, and various different aspects of BIM, and trying to come up with a strategy to really push it a bit further over here.
That's great. That's very interesting. All right, so next thing I want to discuss with you is, now that we know who you are and what you do, how would you compare the level of adoption of BIM in the UK versus Canada?
That's a great question. So for me, I think it's apparent to not just me, but all people, that BIM adoption has really grown in the last decade or so, especially. So BIM as a whole has become something that's transformed from it being perceived as an extra additional thing to do, something that people were not always keen on doing, versus now it's an integral part to project delivery. Mm-hmm. So BIM in the UK is seen as an early adopter of BIM globally, and it's really recognised for pushing the adoption and building new standards and guidance. Mm-hmm. So BIM in the UK is definitely at the really
forefront.
Yeah, is a lot stronger over there than it is in Canada. So in the UK, when I started my career over there, we had PAS 1192, and this is a publicly available specification for BIM, and we used to use that as a guidance. It wasn't quite part of contracts, but it was something many people started to adopt. There was, of course, the UK BIM mandate as well.
Yeah.
So the UK government, in their construction strategy, mandated for BIM on public funded projects and private public partnership projects too. Mm-hmm. This really pushed the industry because now people would have to adopt BIM if they wanted to work on those kind of projects.
Yeah.
And you would have seen this wedge diagram from Buse and Richard, which was explaining the different levels of BIM. So BIM level 1 and 2 was really the starting steps for the government in terms of how they wanted to manage data. And essentially it was always about the data.
Yeah.
And when I think about Canada doesn't have this mandate for BIM, but it is something that they're working on. So that's good news. So there are other organizations such as the IBC and Building Smart, the Canadian chapter, who are
Can BIM as well.
Yes, and Can BIM as well, who are all offering guidance, raising awareness and education in BIM. And this is fantastic. And there are roadmaps and toolkits and even a BIM appendix that can be put into Canadian contracts. But the problem is still maybe this cultural shift that's happening, and Canada is still seen as having a long way to go because it's not as widely embedded and integral in projects as they are in the UK.
I see. If we talk about BIM consultants, I know one of the driving force basically of implementation is two things, in my opinion anyways, based on what I see in Canada. It's either project requirements, whether that, the client is the government or a private client, basically, a developer and whatnot. And the second source of that is consultants, BIM consultants that really promote and push the industry to go forward in BIM. Can you talk a bit about the qualifications and the number of consultants that you find in the UK versus here? I know in Canada, the market is pretty much consolidated. There aren't a lot of BIM consultants as well. That was the case perhaps in the early days, but right now you don't see a handful of BIM consultants on the market. Is that the case in the UK?
Yeah, so the UK, I'd say because of the government mandate, this really forced companies to now rethink, okay, we've got to do this mandate. And at first it was this tick box exercise, need to fulfill this requirement. And then people realize that actually this is now going to change what skills we have, what research we now do, and other things. How do we deliver these projects and become better at BIM once people started to see the value that it can bring on projects? So this really drove a lot of research going forward and engagement with universities to provide courses that are now recognized as giving you a qualification in studying BIM and being able to do it better. But that too, there was always an interest for private companies as well to really be experts in this field and be able to advise others in how they can adopt BIM. So this drove many more consultants to appear. Whereas I found in Canada that there are less consultants. We're looking around and trying to see who do we go to get advice about BIM. So there is definitely a difference. And as I say, because UK adopted it earlier, naturally there's going to be more people over there who are expertise in BIM.
That's great. You mentioned basically the government mandated projects as well. This is currently, if you answer the question directly, if you know or you worked on that, I know you've been away for some years. Are all projects in the UK BIM? There's a BIM requirement on all projects for government projects in the UK?
For government projects, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, not for, and the rest is down to choice. But I think once you see the value, and there is statistics out there now showing the increase, reducing waste and saving time and better quality data coming out, that means more companies are more interested in thinking, why aren't we on that bandwagon? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. If we switch gears, let's talk about standards. I know that there's a very developed standard in the UK, the NBS. Can you talk a bit about that? What is the NBS and what does it do? And how can it help the integration and adoption of BIM on projects? So in terms of standards, there's the standards that you can apply at different levels. whether it's local company standards, your area, national and international. So I mentioned earlier about PAS 1192. This has now all been enrolled into what's called BSEN ISO 19650.
1960.
So this has all been enrolled into what's now BSEN ISO 19650. And that is an internationally recognized standard. And when you look at even the naming of that standard, what it's saying is we've developed standards that meet the international standard, which is the ISO portion of that. But we've also adopted it on a continental basis, hence the EN, which stands for the European standards, and then drilled all the way down to now this is our national standard as BSEN ISO 19650. And this is something that and this is something that's really important because it's showing that they've taken the international standard but made it suitable for the country they're in, because we're not expecting all countries to have the same standard dot for dot. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know with materials, basically I worked basically with some EN standards. EN stands for Europe basically, and ISO standards in the States. Basically, when you talk about materials, it's ASTM, American Standards for Testing Materials. There's I forgot the name of the Chinese one. It's there's a code for it, but I remember I worked with there's different regions in the world that have these standards. So EN is Europe, and then BS is British standard. So that's great.
Yeah.
If you talk about design, let's compare Canada to the UK in design. You worked on both sides basically of construction and design in both countries, as far as I understand. Is that correct?
So mostly on the design side in the UK.
Okay. And in Canada and design side as well?
Construction.
Yeah. Do you have design experience in Canada or in BIM?
I work with others. So I work with different architects and engineers here. But yeah.
Based on that experience, how would you compare design in the UK versus designers, basically architects, engineers, and the design phase of the project in the UK versus Canada? Are they more advanced in the UK in BIM on the design side than Canada?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's one of those factors that BIM was mandated from the government. So people had to get the skills they needed. But because you didn't have people who were specifically tasked with just looking at BIM, it became more integral into your role. So if I was a structural engineer, I would now have to model in using 3D platforms or thinking about different software that can help me to analyze the structure and so on.
I see. Yeah. Did you see it in analysis, or do you see VR? Do you see, let's say, markups? Did they adopt perhaps common data environments much earlier on, BIM 360 and whatnot?
Yeah, so common data environment was always part of the guidance, the PAS 1192. So that was pretty much ingrained. Certainly when I was working over there, that was the first thing that you would know inside out and read and apply to the projects you were on. Nothing's perfect though, and things were kind of a slow adoption because it is this cultural change as well.
Yeah.
And when I compare design UK versus Canada, there is a gap for sure. I feel people there are slightly more driven in adopting BIM, and maybe it always varies in terms of which projects. Some projects you may work on and they're really up for it and they're great, and others you work on, it's the opposite. So there's always going to be pockets of great success and areas where people are still trying to figure out what they're doing. But yeah, in Canada, I do find it more of a struggle. More of when I first started out in the UK, where you really had to prove to someone about BIM. I almost didn't want to use the word BIM because it would just
really scare people off.
Scare people, and but that was also one of the things that drew me to BIM. There was always this divide in the office, and BIM was this thing that people would either love or hate, a bit like Marmite.
Yeah.
So people were either for it or against it, and that was a real challenge that I wanted to certainly address and see if I can break down some barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all interested in the same thing, and that's why we work in the field of BIM. That's sort of, any BIM evangelist or, promoter of BIM basically has that same mission to try to not just adopt it locally or personally, but to really influence others around him or her to make sure that everybody, advances in BIM. Talk to me about the construction side, since you work more on the construction side here. Mm-hmm. How would you compare the construction side in Canada versus the UK in BIM?
Well, one thing that's common in both in the UK and Canada is that the construction industry really is pushing for BIM, and they're driving other people, the designers, and also the operations and maintenance side of things to grow. It's like they need this data, but unfortunately,
you're talking about the UK?
In both.
Okay.
I'd say in Canada, working in construction right now, I do see that as well. I do feel that we're always asking for this information, but not necessarily receiving it.
I see.
And that actually leads me to another point about requirements. And in the UK, we would have what's called an employer's information requirements, where you're defining what you need, what data you need. And here in Canada, we don't have that. And so that's something that's kind of missing and maybe slowing the drive here, or the understanding of what information is being provided.
What about construction BIM execution plans? Is that something that you use regularly here in Canada?
Oh yes, I make sure that I use them. So it's another thing where having BIM as part of the contract is a tricky thing, probably everywhere, but not impossible. And I am happy there is Building Smart who do provide some guidance. But what I've noticed is there's many companies here that don't have that as part of their standard toolkit. They don't have a BIM execution plan.
Yes.
And if they do, it's not seen as a live living document. It's more like something that we've done and that's it. Let's move on.
What about digital twins? Do you do both use digital twins, or do you find the implementation or use of digital twins better used somewhere? So
digital twin to me is bigger than just BIM. We're now connecting more than BIM. We're probably thinking about how are we going to use this data? Who is the end user? How do we get live real-time data from your asset after it's constructed? To me, it's about the operations and beyond. And what we're trying to do is collaborate with the industry, collaborate with people and everybody, and how can you now use that data for something more meaningful, like looking at your performance of the building, looking at low carbon. And the data goes beyond BIM for me, and I don't think that either places are fully doing digital twin, although I can say that UK are probably advancing further than Canada for sure.
What about on-site technologies such as augmented reality? Did you use that in the UK or versus here?
So not in the UK at the time that I was there. Definitely now it's probably used a bit more. And I would say in Canada, it's always this thing as new technology comes about, people want it, but it doesn't fully work the way you'd hope it would work. So maybe in certain industries there may be more benefits of using AR. Certainly in construction, there's probably some benefit in using it, but I still feel that there's some way to go with the technology. It's certainly an exciting time in terms of VR and AR.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about site changes, site instructions, change orders, etc.? Are these fully utilizing BIM currently in Canada, or we're still, 2D pretty much, just annotating drawings and then updating drawings?
Oh, it's all still very 2D.
2D, yeah?
It's still very 2D. However, there are more information management systems out there which can help you connect different tools that you might be using, and being able to get everybody on the same page and the same platform or streamlining the information a bit better than what was done before.
I see.
Some projects try and go paperless, which is great, and when you're doing that, you will have to rely on these other platforms. Yeah,
that's great. All right, well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about operations. So, handover in the UK versus in Canada, do you see basically models being handed over as part of the deliverable after construction in Canada versus the UK?
Yeah, I'd say there have been some projects I've worked on in Canada where the 3D as-built model is part of the handover, or it may be that the data is extracted into a format for FM. And the same in the UK as well. However, in the UK, with this push for kind of open data and COBie, it's something that people are thinking a bit more in terms of the data being built upon from the start to the end, and what does that handover information really look like. But again, in the UK, there's still a slow adoption of using things like COBie, and partly it's because it's a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet, so we need to move to a more database kind of more secure place to put your data. That's where it's going to last a bit longer.
I see. Are there more BIM consultants in the UK that work in operations? Because you don't see a lot of people. I mean, what I personally notice is there's huge focus on design, a big focus on construction, but not a lot of BIM consultants or BIM BIM professionals get involved in operations much.
Yeah.
So is that the case? Based on what you're saying, basically UK is more advanced than Canada in operations and all that. So how would you compare basically the use of these models in operations in Canada in general?
Yeah, so I think in the UK there's definitely more people who are concerned about the operations and maintenance. And again, it's this theme of data and the value of the data that they're getting. I think more people have realized that if we're able to have this data at our fingertips in a system that works for us, we can really improve and make savings in how we operate and maintain buildings. And we've got the information right there. If we need to change something or someone asks you a question, you know exactly where to look. In Canada, I'd say it's mostly the healthcare sector that are more concerned with FM systems and are using it more so than others. But there are still areas where they don't use it at all. And maybe it's just they've never really done that, or maybe it is the fact that there's less people or less consultants to support companies in making that transition to think a bit more long term in terms of whole of life information, and not just, okay, we've made loads of savings here in design and construction, job done, data gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Once the project is handed over, this is actually an issue everywhere where companies don't leverage the use of the model. We just work so hard to put all kinds of information in it for design for construction, but then once the construction is done, we hand over a model and nobody looks at it. Pretty much like, we used to do with drawings, where you print everything, you put them in a, you roll them up and you put them in a locker and you don't touch them for 20 years until something major breaks down.
Yeah.
Then you need to consult the plans and make sure that they make sense for what you need them to do. I want to go back to one topic that interests me a lot, which is clash detection, model-based clash detection. Do you think in the UK that consultants basically are using clash detection in a more advanced way than in Canada? I think throughout the years, there's more and more solutions that address this. And there are many tools basically that help with model-based clash detection, where you could flag basically in 3D what the issues are and where they are and solve them. So my question to you is the UK more advanced in model-based clash detection than Canada? And if so, how?
So there's a little bit difficult for me to answer because, as I say, things have really boomed in the last couple of years. And even as I was leaving the UK, we would still do pretty standard clash detection that we would do here, and the same thing. There are more tools available, and I'm sure that people are definitely using them because it makes your life easier. But I'd say one thing that the UK has that Canada is less so doing is using IFC models and then using that in software like Solibri, where you can now do rule-based check-in and rule-based conflicts, checking that things meet code, or checking even the geometry and different things. So there is a lot being done that automates some level of clash detection and makes you think more than just the physical clash. And that's probably an area where UK are doing more than Canada. But when it comes to clash detection, it is the same in both countries, and it's just, I guess, again, adoption of technology or platforms that are out there which can help you do it more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, there you have it. You have a lot of information about the different phases: design, construction, and operation in BIM. In comparison based on Anneka's experience and view of BIM in the UK versus Canada. Next thing I'd like to leave with basically is three different impressions, basically, or three things that three takeaways basically that we can have in BIM. So what are the three top recommendations that you have for Canada to catch up to the UK in BIM?
That's a really good one. I would say, first of all, and maybe it's not even just learning from UK, but as a general rule, I feel like we all need to consider what is a problem you're trying to solve, and just strip it back and say, okay, let's not think about BIM, but let's just think, I have this problem. And then from there you can build requirements and specify things in more detail and understand what might be the right approach to data and your information. So I think we always need to come back and think, why are we doing this thing, and try and solve the problem using BIM, rather than just jump into, I want to use this part of BIM, and just digging yourself deeper into doing something without actually solving anything.
I see. So if you summarize this, let's say the first recommendation is use BIM based on your needs and based on your purposes, rather than just using a whole lot of tools, just to say we're using BIM. Yeah.
How many times do you have information overkill or not enough information? So really defining the requirements.
Great.
That's where I'm at with that one.
So define the requirements clearly. That's number one. What about your second recommendation?
Second recommendation would be communicate, but go beyond communication. So I feel this whole thing with BIM is 100% about data, but 100% about collaboration. And it's important that we understand other people's perspectives and understand what problems other people might be facing or what issues they may have. And to do that, you just got to spend more time with them. And it might be a day in the life of whoever, but at least you're getting real needs and real things for yourself that you can understand and apply. So I think collaboration is definitely key.
That's great. So don't just communicate, collaborate better. Right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Third recommendation.
The third one. Hey Canada, why don't you just mandate BIM?
That's a great one.
Get standards and get them quick. Like I say, I'm really pleased to hear that Building Smart are developing ISO 19650, but Canadian version. So it's being worked on. So I'm really hopeful. And the other thing they're working on is a level of information specification, which is going to be called the LOX. So two exciting things. We're getting there slowly, but the government just need to say, we're doing BIM.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the third recommendation. Mandate BIM on projects, for government projects, and then have better implementation as well and adoption for the private sector.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent. All right. Well, on that note, let's just get your general impression about the UK. I want to break it down in three different levels, if you like. First of all, from a strategic point of view, I think you made it clear that the UK strategically, is more advanced than Canada. Is that a fair assessment? That in strategic BIM and strategic consulting, BIM is more advanced in the UK than Canada. Is that correct?
100% correct.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. If you talk about the operational level, so the actual boots on the ground adoption and the actual use of tools, the day-to-day, do you find that BIM is better utilized in the UK than in Canada?
Also true.
Also true. Okay. And if we talk about the actual people, so everything that revolves around the interpersonal, communication, the actual titles, the actual, organizational structures of BIM, is the UK more advanced than Canada in that regard as well?
I'd say the people are the same everywhere.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. But I guess being exposed on projects where you've worked with people who are now more familiar with BIM, over time, you're gradually improving data and quality of data and how you speak and communicate. Yeah. That's
great. All right. Well, anything you want to add in terms of general impressions? Did you enjoy, let's say, more working in the UK in BIM than in Canada, or vice versa?
Both, really. I'd say UK really drove me with this challenge. Like, I can tell you a story. I remember this time, I would never forget. We were in a room with global leaders from a well-known international construction company, and we did...
Sorry, is that here or in the UK?
In the UK.
Okay.
This was early in my career, and we did a simple experiment, which was the group had to build a building out of Lego theme again.
Okay.
But half the room had a 3D model, access to all the quantities, materials, they knew how it would look. And the other half had traditional methods, so just drawings, nothing fancy, nothing 3D.
Yeah.
No limited software, just CAD or so. We did this so that this workshop where both teams had to come and buy the materials, buy the Lego, and construct the building. And what we found is like the cultural stuff is real. The pushback and the drawbacks we get from people is real. But the results of a simple workshop like that is also real, and definitely it proves that using BIM is going to save you. So do BIM, it's a no-brainer.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very interesting. I don't think I have done such an experiment basically in the past, but we definitely have surveys clients in the past, and had work groups and focus groups and whatnot regarding BIM. That's great. So I think this is a lot of insight and a lot of experience that you shared with us today, based on your personal experience and your view basically of BIM in Canada versus the UK. Any last comments? Or I know you're working on a certain project also with your friend Ksenia. We talked about it in a different video. Want to talk a bit about this? BIM Kitchen, correct?
Sure, yeah. So the BIM Kitchen is a fun little project I'm working with Ksenia Gordienko on. And really we're addressing this issue we have in Canada of not enough places to speak about BIM. The idea is just to have a non-judgmental open space where people can come and talk about BIM, whether they know a lot about it or nothing at all. So yeah, we just encourage you to engage, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'll be running kind of short interviews and snippets of perspectives from different people. All right.
Well, there you have it. Thank you very much for your time, Anneka.
Thank you, Tarek.
And it was great. I hope you learned something new about experience in the UK in BIM versus Canada. This is a theme basically that I hear from different people as well, that I dealt with and I work with actually currently that have worked in the UK, that the UK is definitely much more advanced in BIM than Canada. I find there are certain instances also in the countries that are more advanced, and the instances that I have experienced myself is the USA, the UK and Australia, that have much more structured and defined framework basically for BIM than Canada. And a lot of times basically when we refer to different standards or different guidelines and whatnot, they usually stem from one of these countries basically to say here's an American standard or here's a certain BIM execution plan or whatnot that came from these countries and from consultants in these countries, or even universities as well, the academic sector as well, that produces a lot of very useful content.
Yeah.
So so on that note, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you guys make sure to check out BIM Kitchen. I'll leave a link in the description below, and we'll see you next time on another episode of BIM Careers. You guys have a great day and a great week. Thank you for joining.
I'm more interested in sustainability and sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Architecture, engineering.
Sustainability and energy. That's what okay.
Anything else?
BSEM. Shoot, what is it? 1965?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
I
but
know it.
I know what you're talking about.
1965. Canada is great.
Too late.
Super great opportunity here.
Too late, Anneka. Too late. All right, let's stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.